really appreciate the opportunity to be here and to present this program because as both Veronica and I go around the country and even out of the country, we are often, this is the most often asked question that I have is why don't my prints match my monitor? Why doesn't what I see on my monitor appear on the print when I send it to a lab, when I print it myself? It's like the biggest mystery in photography. And so that's what we want to talk about today and try to debunk some stuff. So I am the brand manager for X-Rite Photo Video at Mac Group. Mac Group is the North America distributor for X-Rite photo and video products. That's US and Canada. And I have been with Mac Group now for almost 28 years. I've been in the photo industry for my entire career, which I'm not going to tell you how long because it's embarrassing how old I am.
No,
But
it's
I,
impressive, Brenda. It's impressive.
well, let's put it this way, kids. I processed my first roll of film when I was 9 years old. Okay. And next week I'll be 64. So I have been in the photo industry from the time when there was no RC black and white paper to the height of the digital photography. And I have worked in photo labs. I have worked in studios, commercial labs. I've done a lot of stock photography. And now on the side, I actually do art repro copy work. And the reason I do it is because it is so incredibly hard, which means that it is so incredibly satisfying when I get it right. So I just really like doing it because it's really, really hard. And then my companion here is Veronica Cotter from Hahnemühle. Please introduce yourself, Madame.
Hey, everyone. Yes, I have been with Hahnemühle now for almost 8 years. And prior to that, like Brenda, my life started on the analog side of things. I worked for Oriental Photo, which was the exclusive distributor of the new Seagull black and white paper. And that was the paper that Ansel Adams and Brett Weston and John Sexton and a number of other photographers used. One of the highlights of my career is I met Ansel Adams soon after I joined Oriental and Brett Weston. From Oriental, I went to Ilford and was there for 17 plus years. And that's when I first met Jen and Shay and everybody at Looking Glass when they were up on Telegraph. And many of you are probably familiar with Ilford, but it remains today still very strong with black and white chemicals, film, paper. And back in the day, there was Ilfochrome or Cibachrome, depending on who owned Ilford at the time. It was the same material and some RA4 materials. As this slide states, I am a huge fan of photography. If you look around my house, you see some of the photographs, big and small, behind me, but this whole house, there's really no open wall space. There's a photograph everywhere, and probably as many or more books on photography, photographers, etc. So I don't want to take much time because I know Brenda has a hard stop, but I do want to thank Jen and John and everybody at Looking Glass. They've been a significant part of the community for, gosh, as long as I can remember. And I always enjoy working with my friend Brenda. It gives us a chance to hang out and talk about things that we love. So back to you, Brenda.
All righty. Well, I created this slide before Veronica and I started doing this together, or I would have put, we love photography. And we really do. That's the last thing Veronica said. For my money, this is the golden age of photography. Photography has never been more fun. There's never been a higher level of creativity. It's never been easier in many, many ways. It's just an absolute blast to do what we can do on our laptop computers. It is stunning when I think back on how recently that has come to be. Now, the objective of photography, I think we would all agree, is that we see things in nature or that product or whatever that we want to create, and we want to get what we see. Now, there are three parts of that puzzle. One is getting the correct color at capture, of course. The second part is getting the correct color, luminance, and contrast on your monitor. And the third is getting the correct color on your print or whatever output that you are using. Now, most people, particularly in the United States, since we read left to right, logically think that the place to start in color management or color control, which is what I think it really should be called instead of management, because our objective is really to control color so that we get a predictable outcome. So most people, because we read left to right, kind of logically assume that you need to start with the camera, and then later on you're going to get your monitor done, and then later on from that you're going to think about how to get the right print process out. That's not the way this goes at all, because your monitor is literally your viewfinder. And if your monitor is lying to you, then you have absolutely no chance of getting the output that is predictable, the output that you want, the output that reflects your creative vision. It is simply impossible because the information that you're getting from the monitor is a big fat lie. So, what we have to do is we have to make our monitors tell the truth. Now, the most common thing that has been said to me over the years is I'll set my, don't worry, I can see color beautifully. I know exactly how to edit. I'm really good at remembering color. They tell me all these things and they say, I'll just set my monitor so it looks good to my eyes. And I say, okay, count the white dots or count the black dots, whichever you want to. Now, this is obviously an optical illusion, but it is one way that I'm trying to help you understand that your eyes are not instruments. Eyes are made to adapt and try to make sense of what they see. So this is just in black and white. Just imagine what happens in color. Do these two squares look the same? They certainly don't to me. And even when I join them, I think I see a gradation from the left to the right. It looks darker over here to me. It's only when I remove the background that I can really see that this is exactly the same color from left to right. Same here. The blues to my eye look dramatically different. The one on the left looks much darker to me than the right. But when I remove the bars, I can see it's exactly the same color. And the more light the color is, that is the difference between, the bigger the difference is. So our eyes are made, they are designed to adapt. They are easily influenced by surrounding colors. If I have a green wall in my field of view where I'm editing, if I can even see it just around my monitor, everything that I edit is going to be magenta. It just is because my eyes have shifted in color. All right. So let's have a look at this one. Now, most people think that this is a GIF. It is not. This is a still image. But most people, when they look at this, are going to see some illusion of movement. And the more tired you are, the more movement you will see. So for me, it's 3:12 in the afternoon. For you, it's a lot earlier, so you'll be a lot fresher. I'm going to see a lot more movement at 3 in the afternoon that I would be seeing at 8 a.m. because I'm tired. So again, our eyes try to adapt and make sense. The other thing that affects our eyes is our emotional state. There is a reason why we say, why there is the saying that when we're angry, we're seeing red, or We are green with envy because strong emotion affects how we see color. Our color vision can shift depending on how tired we are, how much liquid we've had, whether we're hungry, how much exercise we've gotten during the day. Our physical and emotional state causes our color vision to be different. So, again, eyes and human bodies are not instruments that can measure constants. They adapt to whatever is going on with us. Our ability to judge color obviously changes throughout the day for all these reasons. When I ran high end color labs back in the 80s, we did all our critical color correction in the morning because we were all rested. None of us were hungry, and hopefully we hadn't made each other mad yet. So we had stable emotions, stable physicality, not tired. We're going to see color better than we would if those other things come into play. Now, if you are one of the few people who cannot see a number in this field, you have what is commonly known as color vision deficiency in the red green area. It's very, very common. There's a funny story about the first time that they played Thursday night football on NFL football in the States, and they started having the football players wear the same color shoes and pants and jerseys. And the first game that was played between a team that had all green uniforms and a team that had all red uniforms on a green field. And people who had red green color deficiency could not tell which team was which. So this is a common issue. It's going to happen more with males than females, but it is not an uncommon thing. And then the last thing is age. As we age, the lenses in our eyes turn amber and become more clouded. This is what cataract surgery fixes. So if you know anyone, your friends, your parents, your grandparents who have had cataract surgery, they will say, "Oh my goodness, I can not only see everything so much more clearly, but the colors are just amazing." So the second thing people say to me after they say, "I'll just set it so it looks good to my eyes," is, "If I buy a good monitor, the color will be right." Well, here's the deal. Most of the monitors that we use to edit photography and video, for that matter, are not designed to edit video and photography. They are designed and sold to view internet content, movies, all of the things that we access through our computers. They come out of the box very bright, very high contrast, and just a little bit cool or blue. Why is that? Because all of this content that we look at looks crisper, sexier when we look at it on a monitor like that. But when we try to edit on a monitor that is too bright, too contrasty, and a little bit blue, we are going to make images that are we're going to change our files so that they're too dark, too flat, and too warm. And I'll bet you there's a couple of people in this webinar who have had that experience, and we'll talk about that when we get to questions. Now, we also have the situation where multiple monitors need to be matched. For instance, on my desktop, I have a 30-inch LG and I have my laptop monitor. These are two very, very different monitors, and I want them to match because it makes me nuts if they don't match. Not to mention the fact that if I unhook my laptop from this larger monitor, I want to make sure that I'm seeing good, solid, predictable color on my laptop, even if I'm just sitting around sort of pre-editing photographs. And then, of course, my monitor needs to match the monitor at my lab or at the customer to which I am selling my photography. So if you're selling photography to someone for stock or for use in magazines, I assure you they have calibrated and profiled monitors. because they are creating graphics that have to be reproduced in print. So their monitors have to be calibrated and profiled. What happens if you send them a file that you have edited on a monitor that's too bright, too contrasty, and too cool? They're going to pull it up on their monitor and it's going to be too dark, too flat, and a little bit warm. And then they're going to look at my photography that comes right after yours and they're going to go, wow, this color is amazing. So you want to be sure that you have the right color on your monitor when you're editing. And of course, everybody knows this, in with any electronics, they drift over time. So even if you buy a very expensive pre-calibrated monitor, over time you're going to need to recalibrate, reprofile that monitor. Now, here's the problem. With our industry, every item on this screen produces a different set of colors, a different group of colors that we call a gamut. So we could just as well have called it a basket, but we call it a gamut. So if every single one of these devices produced the same basket full of colors, all we would have to do is calibrate them. But because they all produce a different group of colors, a different collection of colors, a different color gamut, we have to make adjustments in how those out of gamut colors move into gamut. So let's look at what that means. Cameras produce either sRGB or RGB when you're doing processed JPEG files. If you're shooting raw, you're not processing the files, you're not restricting them. But if you're actually shooting JPEGs, if you look in your camera, you will find that most of you can choose whether you're going to save sRGB files or Adobe RGB. So sRGB is smaller than Adobe RGB. Then we look at monitor profiles. Laptop monitors, even some of the Retina displays that are super good, generally don't produce as many colors as a higher quality, larger size monitor. And then you get into some of the higher end editing monitors that can actually produce Adobe RGB, this very large color space. Then we go to print. Now, any paper color gamut, any, printed on any printer with any ink, is going to have a smaller color gamut than you can see on a very high-end monitor or that you can capture, particularly if you're capturing raw. So that color gamut is actually not only smaller, but a very different shape than these other color gamuts. And they'll vary. So this is one paper profile, this is another paper profile. So they'll vary from paper to paper and from printer to printer. What we need to understand is that if I capture the wireframe in Adobe RGB and my monitor will only produce sRGB or thereabouts, this is what I'm losing. So all the colors over here that I've captured have to move into this space for me to see them represented on the screen. And how they move in relation to the colors that are already in here is what color management is all about. It is all about mathematics. That's why we cannot eye it up. We can't do it with our eyes. There are millions of colors, so there has to be some mathematical norm for how they move into the gamut that we're in. So if we look at camera to monitor, we lose some colors. If we look at monitor to print, we lose more colors, okay? So actually, there are a lot of printer profiles that can print colors that you can't really even see on your monitor, okay? So everything has to work together. And then when we get to camera to print, look at the difference. This is a much smaller collection of colors than we're able to capture. So that's enough of geeking out on color gamuts for the moment, I'm going to turn it over to Veronica, and she's going to talk with you a little bit about choosing the right paper to communicate your color vision.
So Brenda, I'm thinking maybe, do you want to keep going because you have limited time and then I can jump in at the end?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to answer it now or toward the end, but someone had a question about an ASO monitor.
Oh, well, I used to sell ASO monitors, so I'm very fond of them. I love them, love them, love them. They're extremely expensive. They have very long warranties, and for very good reason. They're a very high quality monitor. You're going to pay through the nose, but honestly, if you do a return on investment, if you calculate the number of monitors, if you're a heavy user, the number of monitors you're going to run through in a period of 5 years, then you very well may have paid for it by buying 2 or 3 different monitors that are going to start to fade and shift and do all this crazy stuff. That means you can't really keep them profile. So schools in the back in the day bought a lot of ASO monitors because when they did the return on investment calculations, it was better for them to go ahead and spend this money now than to have to replace them 2 years down the road and then 2 years down the road again. Just remember, when you buy a monitor that has a warranty like ASO has a 5 year or 30,000 hour warranty. It's like, like car warranties, 4 years or 40,000 miles, right? So if you let your monitor go to sleep, those hours still count that it's asleep. So be sure, if you are using a high end monitor, there's a counter inside there that's counting the number of hours that monitor is on. So if you're going to get the full year length out of your monitor warranty, be sure you don't just let it go to sleep, turn it off.
Hey,
Is
Brenda,
that good?
the
Yeah.
second part of the question is, what difference would I see if oh, sorry, I have an ASO monitor that has its own color checker. What difference would I see if I calibrated it with an X-Rite or Spider system?
If you're telling me that it has the sensor built in to the monitor, absolutely no difference, because those sensors are made by X-Rite. So there is no value to buying another sensor. Okay. But if you have another monitor or another laptop or something else that needs to try to match that monitor as close as possible, then you're going to have some kind of external sensor. But be well assured that if it has the little thing that flips up and measures the little colors down the right hand corner, that is an X-Rite sensor.
Cool. Brenda, you up for another one about the BenQ
Yeah, sure.
monitor? So
Yeah.
Katrin has a BenQ 27-inch SWT 700 PT. Is that considered a good monitor for photography?
I'd have to look it up,
Okay.
but I can tell you absolutely BenQ. I'd have to look up that model. I don't know all the models. We'd have to have my friend Art Swansang here, who knows all them by heart. But BenQ is a very good company. I've done a lot of work with ASO, done a lot of work with BenQ, and I've done a lot of work with ViewSonic. So they're all good. They're all good edit monitors, and there are an awful lot of other good monitors on the market that have very good life, particularly in the retina area because of the technology of the screens. But you still got to calibrate and profile.
And a couple folks, Bill and David, both said they've had their ASO monitors for 10 plus years and they're going strong.
Yep.
Here's one for you that I'm not going to touch. Can speakers talk to using a histogram versus waveform versus vector scope? Is that a question?
Well, we're talking about video, and I would urge you to go to on the YouTube channel X-Rite Photo. We have a whole section of videos using vector scopes, using waveforms, using RGB parade to correct color, using the X-Rite video color checker, and doing it more mathematically by the numbers than doing it by eye. And it depends on what edit software you're using, whether you're using Final Cut, whether you're using Blackmagic, DaVinci, or whether you're using, like I do, Adobe Premiere Pro. So I would urge you to go there. We have a little series of 3 videos, that one on each one of those software packages, that tells you exactly how to use the vector scopes to do that.
And here's another question from Jude. I have a 27-inch iMac that I use for everything: Lightroom editing, emails, web. And I have the X-Rite i1 Display Pro. If I calibrate for editing in Lightroom, will it affect the look for reading emails and using the web?
Yeah, so here's what I do on all monitors that are controllable from a laptop, like that, or like the Apple, the iMacs. I turn the luminance all the way up when I start to measure luminance on the monitor. Now listen carefully. And then when the measurement comes up and tells me that my target is 120 and my monitor is 450, then what I do is I start clicking down 1, 2, 3, 4, depending on the age of the monitor and the type of computer it is. It's going to be somewhere between 4 and 6 clicks down from the brightest. The software is going to say, bingo, there you are. You want to stop at the one that is the one just over, where it goes under the 120 setting. All right. The reason you want to do this is because, and then count, like my laptop is 6 clicks down from the top. So yesterday morning, I got up at 5 a.m. I had some repro work to edit. I wanted to sit in my recliner and mess with it because it was stitching things together. And so I turn on my computer. I let my monitor warm up. I turn it all the way up, and then I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 clicks down is where that luminance is right to edit photography. Everybody follow? So that means that when I am outside and I want to turn my monitor luminance all the way up to read my email, I can. You see what I mean? If you leave the luminance all the way up and you bake the luminance into the profile, 2 things happen. Now you can't turn up the monitor because it's all the way up and the profile has pushed it down. And the second thing that happens is the gamut of the monitor profile is actually smaller when you do that, because it's trying to do more. You haven't helped it out by calibrating the right luminance. So I hope that helps. If it doesn't, if you go into the software and start to use it, you will see exactly what I mean. Okay.
So maybe 1 or 2 more, and then
Yes.
you can continue. So I want to make sure we have
Yeah.
enough time. So the follow-up to what you just described from Jude again is, can you change it manually?
Yes. Yes. As long as you know how many clicks it is. So like on these new Mac laptops, you can't use that slider. You've got to do that. You've got to count clicks. Okay. You've got to have some way to quantify how much to turn it down. Right. And if you know that, then you can turn it up anytime you want to. You just have to turn it up. Yeah, you just have to go all the way up to the top and then count back down to where you're supposed to be before you start editing. But that's exactly what I do. And that's what I teach everybody to do.
And then is there an online tutorial for using the i1 profiler?
Yes. In fact, Art Swansang has just recently done some nice videos for us using i1 Display Pro and i1 Profiler. We also made a very nice, concise how-to movie for i1 Display Studio that's right there on our YouTube channel as well. So yeah, we do our very best to give you all the tools you need to be able to do this successfully one time, right? You're going to do this once a month because, again, monitors drift. People ask me, how do I know how often to do it? I'll tell you exactly how you know. You start by doing it once a month. If you do it once a month and you do the before and after you do the reprofiling, and there is no difference, and you decide for some good reason that you want to go 6 weeks or 8 weeks, try it. But when you get to the point where you can see a difference between before and after, you have gone too far. Because the objective is for us to keep our monitors absolutely uniform. So we don't want it drifting off and then coming back. We want to reprofile within that time frame for your monitor and your electricity where it's not drifting out too much. So if every time your refrigerator or your heater or your air conditioner goes on, your lights dim a little bit, you're going to have to profile more often because your electricity is fluctuating. And electronic devices do not like that, particularly monitors. So just understand that it all has to do with the age of your monitor, the kind of monitor you have, and the quality of the electricity that's coming into it.
Perfect.
Okay, shall we move on?
To continue.
All right. Let's see what we can do here.
And while you're
All right.
queuing up your next slide, Brenda, I think it bears repeating. Candace wrote in the chat, Brenda is an amazing educator, and I would absolutely agree.
Oh, you're so sweet. You're so sweet. Thank you. I am so passionate about this stuff. I love this stuff because it lets me control what I want to get on the print or what I want to give to somebody in a file. And it's always from the first time I ever saw a print come up in a tray until today, it is still the most magical thing in the world to take a picture and then see a print that is what I saw. So I just,
and to hold it in your hand versus
yes,
get it on the screen.
Yeah, and before I forget it, Veronica, I want to talk about that because, I tell a story in this program about a print that has been hanging on my wall for several years that a dear friend in the industry gave me, a very famous photographer who was very kind and gave me this print. And it's a picture of a cafe in the night. It's black and white. It's in the middle of nowhere. And it's just the cafe and the sign that says Brenda's Cafe. And so he gave it to me because it had my name on it. And it's actually the centerfold in his book on Bruce Springsteen. So it hangs in my kitchen. And I tell people all the time, this print is like an old friend. I walk by it many days and I don't even give it a second look. And then there are other days when I look at it and after all these years, I see something new in it that I haven't seen before. So again, prints. All right, let's go back to how does color management work? Monitor calibration solutions include a piece of software and a piece of hardware. And those two things work together. The software sends colors to the monitor, and the software knows exactly what color it's sending to the monitor. The hardware device is very sophisticated, and it measures the color and luminance and contrast that the monitor is producing. And then it reports back to the software and says, I know what you sent, but here's what you got. And then the software takes over and compares those two known things, those two things that are not affected by being tired or being hungry or being angry. Though that dead on software and hardware says, if I sent this and I got this, I need to make these changes to make this monitor produce color as accurately as possible. Now, there's a variety of different devices that you can purchase to do exactly what you need to do. And let me just really quickly go through those. If you've heard of Color Monkey Display, Last year, it was replaced by a product called I1 Display Studio. All right. Uh, it will do everything that you need to do if you are doing general editing on something like my LG monitor that I have, or my Mac laptop, or my iMac. It will do the engine that runs this software and the inside mechanics of this device are exactly like the i1 Display Pro. But the software interface and the number of bells and whistles that are built into that software interface is different. And that's what makes the difference in these two products, from i1 Display Studio to i1 Display Pro. So somebody's going to say, well, if i1 Display Studio does everything I want to do, why would I go with i1 Display Pro? Well, if you have a BenQ or a ViewSonic or an AZO monitor that has its own software, i1 Display Pro is going to work with that software. i1 Display Studio is not. So you can use our software to do your laptop, and BenQ or AZO or ViewSonic software with the same device to do your higher end monitor. And then we also have now, in addition to all of the things that the i1 Display Pro will do, which gives you contrast limiting for an even better screen to print match when you're printing, and larger patch sets. So if you're doing commercial work and you've got Pantone colors you need to reproduce, you want to pull those Pantone colors into the patch set that is going to be flashed up on the monitor, so that you tune up that monitor profile so you're sure it's getting those Pantone colors as close as possible. And you can even, if you, for instance, a lot of people are doing flower photography, pinks and purples are out of gamut for most monitors and almost all papers, but we've got to reproduce them. So the best way we can do that is to put a problematic image into the software, and it will actually extract patches to add to your patch set to tune it up even more. And now, if you do a lot of video work, you may want to go with the i1 Display Pro Plus because it has the BT1886 tone curve in it. It will accurately measure monitors up to 2,000 nits versus 1,000 nits on, or candelas per meter square. So if you're trying to look at a video monitor outside, you may be profiling it at a much higher luminance than you would if you're doing it to edit photography. You'll get better blacks, you'll get better shadow color, you'll get, it's really recommended for HD and HDR monitors. So in addition, for your camera profiling, you've got the Color Checker Passport Photo 2. And if you want to make your own printer profiles, or you need to make a scanner profile, a flatbed scanner profile, then the i1 Studio is a great option because it basically does it all. We've got tons of options. We have the blog that has a blog.xrightphoto.com. The YouTube channel, just go to YouTube and search X-Rite Photo Video. It'll pop right up. And then xrightphoto.com. Just let me look at this, seal this in your mind. Do not, hear me, do not go to xrite.com. You will get lost there because all the industrial products are there, and you will go, what in the world is all this stuff? Go to xrightphoto.com and you will see curated there for you all the photo and video products. Okay. Whew. I'm going to be quiet now.
Well, Brenda, there's 2 thumbs up. Great job. I think someone may have posted the links. One of the questions was links to tutorials, and I think Jen and also Chris found the one she mentioned, that you mentioned, from Art Swansong. That's
yes.
in there.
Yeah, it's right on our video on our YouTube channel.
Okay.
Or it's on his YouTube channel, which is Art is Right.
And then Dana asks, I don't understand, what is the target luminance factor you are trying to match with your monitor adjustment?
All right, that's a very good question. So we have norms in the industry that we follow. One of those norms is the white point. And the white point we use in photography is called D65 or 6500 Kelvin. Okay. Now, the reason we use that actually has very little to do with the monitors that we use today. It's because back in the days of cathode ray tube monitors, the first white point that we could use on those monitors that gave us a pure white was 6500. So even if we were looking at our prints under 5500-degree light as a general rule in the graphics industry and 5000 Kelvin in the photo industry, we were still calibrating our monitors to 6500. Well, that legacy has just gone forward. So we continue to use that. Now, the luminance value is in either nits or candelas per meter squared, which is the same thing. It's just two ways to say it. And 120 is what we are shooting for. That is the place that I would suggest you start. That is the default setting in all of our software. And why would you change that? You would change that if you calibrate and profile your monitor and you use 120 and you edit a photograph and you send it off to your lab and it still comes back too dark. That tells you that for your eyes and your editing environment, 120 is still too bright. So you want to reprofile at 100, and then it's going to match better to the print output. But for most people, somewhere between 100 and 120 is going to be where you need to be. That's your target luminance. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So I'll continue to answer questions, but you please go ahead.
Okay.
Veronica.
Brenda, there's one, you're probably going to have to scroll up a little bit from Sang Chen. He was the one asking, well, you'll see it in the chat.
Okay.
And I think the links to the tutorials, you covered that with the xrightphoto.com, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Then
one person who specifically wanted somebody, hopefully Brenda, if you could put the software names that you might have mentioned into the chat.
For video editing?
I don't believe so. You'll see Malachiah Adams.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll look through these.
Perfect.
Okay, great.
all right. So I am going to hey Jen, can you share, can I do a screen share?
You can. You should be able to, yes.
Okay, cool. All right. Okay. All right, so hopefully everyone can see the website. And I find this it's a great
Veronica, it's not actually shared. So if you brought the site up, just make sure you hit the share screen.
Okay.
It didn't work.
Sorry.
Okay.
Got so excited to start talking that. Okay, now can you see it?
No.
Huh.
Yes. Oh no, Lynn Adler started screen sharing.
Uh-oh.
Lynn, I don't know that you meant to do that.
Wow.
Okay, let me go into participants and I can probably undo. I might be able to undo that.
Good thing it wasn't
Yeah.
something embarrassing.
Done. There we go. Veronica, you should be able to set up if you launch what it is you want to see before you try to share your screen. That's usually the most effective.
Okay, well, so I've got it. Okay, this is the first time this has happened, so my apologies. Okay, now,
Veronica- yeah. Are you sharing a screen or are you sharing your browser?
I'm trying to share my screen.
Try sharing the browser window.
Aha, I got it. Okay, sorry, I had a middle-aged moment. Okay, are we good now?
Yes. Perfect.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry, had a moment. What I really like about our website, it's a great overview of the company and papers. And I'm going to spend just a couple minutes on the history and the legacy, and then do a deeper dive into fine art papers. So if you were to go into the About Us, there is the history of the company. And I can tell you that Hahnemühle has been making paper continuously since 1584. So that's 436 years in the exact same location. The other, and I could spend more time talking about all these interesting facets, but one of the other things I think is pretty interesting. So for 436 years, Hahnemühle has sat adjacent to an old growth forest. And our responsibility to the environment has always been extremely important. You'll notice that there's a section on water. So the mill sits next to a stream. We use the water in the production of paper. When the water goes back into the stream, it's drinking water quality. As I mentioned, we're adjacent to an old growth forest. So we try and make sure that we recycle as many of our materials as possible. And for a 436-year-old paper mill, what I find extremely impressive is that we are 100% off the grid. So the mill is powered by a combination of wind, solar, and water. So you'll see as you look at the website that we do artist papers, and these we refer to as traditional fine art papers for sketching, pastel, watercolor, sketchbooks, notebooks. Filtration is a big part of our business as well, and it's because of the filtration division that Hahnemühle was considered an essential business. When the pandemic started, Hahnemühle started to make papers for COVID test kits, and also some of the face coverings, protective face coverings. So there are many facets to Hahnemühle, but it all is focused on paper. So we're going to look at digital fine art papers. And you'll see in here that there's Hahnemühle Photo. And what that is, and for those of you that started in darkroom, the photo range is kind of like your RC papers. It's a really nice collection of papers. You have a couple of matte papers, a glossy, a luster, a photo pearl, and a canvas as well. They don't have the same longevity as our fine art papers, but if you're new to printing, if you want to look at image on paper to determine if this is an image you want to take to the next step of printing on a fine art paper, or you're a student and you're going to burn through a lot of paper as you kind of refine your printing skills, this is a great place to start. Each range that we look at has a corresponding sample pack. The sample pack has 2 sheets of each of the papers in that range. Each paper is marked on the back with the name of the paper, and it's a great way to print on a series of papers, put them up, look at them, and begin to identify the characteristics that are most compelling for you. But as I said, we are going to spend the majority of our time talking about the fine art range. And when I say fine art, these are papers that with pigment inks will last 100 years plus. And I will, before I get into each range, tell you that we use cotton, we use alpha cellulose, which is a refined wood pulp, and we also use natural fibers like bamboo, agave, and hemp. So the first one is the natural line. And two of these three papers we just introduced last year. So the natural line, they're fibers that we work with suppliers that have pesticide-free fields. You'll see that each paper is a combination of bamboo, hemp, or agave, and then cotton. The cotton that's in each of these papers is recycled cotton. So as we make paper, they trim off the sides, and that paper is repulped and becomes the cotton that is in each of these papers. These are all TIPA award-winning papers. And what's universal about all three of them, they're all warm base tint papers. And a lot of times warmer tone papers are really great for skin tones, although I've seen landscapes, street art, a variety of subjects on these particular papers. So of the three, the bamboo is the warmest. Hemp and agave have a very similar white point. And of the three, the agave has the most texture. And once again, there is a corresponding sample pack. And sample packs are available in two sizes, 8.5 by 11 and 13 by 19. So those are the natural line papers. Matte Fine Art Smooth. Anytime you see photo rag in the name of any of our papers, it's 100% cotton. And if you've ever been to the store or looked at any of our swatch books at trade shows, you might have actually flipped right past the rice paper. It's the thinnest paper in the entire range of fine art papers. It's 100 GSM, but it is an extremely robust paper. And you can fold it, you can crease it. And Shay is the first person, and for those of you that don't know Shay at the store, she's a remarkable artist. And a number of years ago, Shay was telling me about a show that she was preparing for, and she had taken the rice paper and created scrolls. So what she did, she literally folded the paper, creased it, stitched it with a sewing machine, then put wooden dowels in top and bottom and finished it off with some hardware. And the clever artist that she is, she took a thread color that picked up one of the elements in the image, and it was just a beautiful contrast. So don't overlook the rice paper. A few years ago, we needed to get some shades for the windows in our mud porch, and they're narrow, and custom shades would have been extremely expensive. So we printed 3 different images, we trimmed them down, we put them up with decorative push pins, and we have a beautiful and inexpensive solution to window coverings. As I said, photo rag, 100% cotton. So photo rag is the most popular paper across all brands worldwide, and it comes in 3 weights, 188, 308, and a 500, which almost has a feel of cardstock or a mat board. We have 2 double-sided papers, Book and Album and Duo. The difference between the 2 of them, Book and Album is a grain-specific paper, so the grain of the paper goes in with the binding of the book. Ultra Smooth is a variation. It has a texture very similar to photo rag. It has a base tint very similar to photo rag, but it's very, very smooth, almost has a velvety feel to it. And then Bright White, just by virtue of its name, is a brighter base tint. And the great thing about digital, and I think Brenda will agree with me, is that when we worked in the darkroom, you were printing black and white, or if you were getting involved in C prints, color prints. The great thing about digital is that both black and white and color look remarkable on these papers. It's not an either or. And I tell people, you know, if you go to the store, if you've ever looked at any of our swatch books, you may see a particular paper and it has a black and white image. Do not pigeonhole the paper and think it's specifically for black and white or color. Both work really, really well. And what you'll see on this landing page is that.
Hey, Veronica, can I interrupt you one
Yeah,
second? I'm
absolutely.
so sorry.
No.
You know, I gotta go, but I want to tell
Okay.
everybody about my favorite paper.
I will. I refer to also known as the Brenda Hipsher paper.
Okay,
I
all right.
will.
Thanks
Okay.
for coming, everybody. Thank you, Veronica. Sorry to interrupt. See you
No
guys later.
problem. See you
Bye-bye.
later, Brenda. Bye.
Thanks, Jen. Bye-bye.
You're awesome.
Yes, she is. She's an amazing educator. Remember that. Several of our papers come with a decollage, which is a torn edge, and there's information on that here. And once again, there's a corresponding sample pack. And there's also a link to the photo cards, and I'll talk a bit more about those after. This is probably one of my favorite products that we have, and there's a nice little story and project associated with the photo cards that we will talk about in a few minutes. So photo cards are available in 4x6 and A5, which is almost 6x8. So those are all the papers in the matte fine art smooth range. Then we move to textured, matte fine art textured. And this is a range that I think is a little counterintuitive for people that haven't tried them. And you can get a pretty good sense just looking at these cutaways of the paper, just how much texture some of them have. William Turner by far has the most texture, but you would think a paper with that much texture would soften the image. It's really the exact opposite. There's something about the texture that gives the image another depth or dimension. It's almost like a 3D effect. And what I find myself sometimes doing is I just want to kind of get further and further into the image, and that's what the texture does. It really draws you in. So the William Turner, Albrecht Dürer. William Turner has long been my favorite. It's on my long short list of favorite papers. And Torsion is another one that I've had a heightened appreciation for over the past few years. What I love about the texture is that it creates this beautiful frame or border for the image. And often when people print with this paper, they're printing with a border. And if they're matting it, they leave enough room so that you can see the texture of the paper. And that reminds me more and more now, because of the beautiful textures of these papers, it's kind of interesting to see how people are displaying work. I've seen work that's framed, but there's no glass. I've seen clip and magnetic systems, so people will hang images that way, so that there's this different level of engagement with the work. And what we've started doing at trade shows, and I've actually seen it now at a few gallery shows, if you choose to do that, you know that someone will want to touch it. So adjacent to the image, there's a 2x4 square that we refer to as the touchable surface. So you can touch and feel what the paper's like while looking at the image and not touching the image. German etching is a slightly more refined texture, also one of my favorites. And then museum etching at 350 GSM is certainly the heaviest and also has a real subtle texture, but you can definitely feel it. Two of the papers come in a decollage, the William Turner and the museum etching. And when we talk about decollage paper, the nice thing about it, excuse me for disappearing, is the display options. It's kind of hard to see, but this is what we call a float frame. And if you have a decollage print in there, it really, it enhances the presentation. sample pack, and then there is one paper from this range that's available in a 4x6 photo card. So glossy fine art. The first thing you have to know about the glossy fine art, not all the papers are glossy. There are 2 pearls, 2 satins, but when you compare these papers to everything else we've just talked about, they certainly have more gloss than a textured matte or natural line paper. So don't be confused by the name, just understand it in the context of everything else in the fine art range. So the first one is the photo rag metallic, also known as Brenda's favorite paper. And often when I talk to people about papers and I mention photo rag metallic, they'll go, oh no, 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 no. I do not like high gloss papers, not my thing. This is the exact opposite of this. It's the only fine art metallic paper. It's 100% cotton. It has this really beautiful metallic pigment coating. It's a 340 GSM, so it has a really good heft to it, and it reproduces color and black and white remarkably. I have to say I was skeptical about black and white, just coming from, you know, decades of black and white darkroom papers. But I have to say the prints and the albums that we had 2 years ago at Photo Plus in New York, there were a few black and white images that literally took my breath away. So the things that you would expect to look terrific on metallic paper, cars, planes, motorcycles, absolutely do, but don't limit yourself to those subjects. I've seen architectural renderings. I have seen portraits. I've seen underwater, night photography. All of them lend themselves really well to the metallic paper. Anytime you see fine art in the name of any of our papers, that indicates that it's an alpha cellulose or refined wood pulp based paper. And it's not that cotton is better, alpha cellulose or bamboo or agave or any better. They're just some of the different substrates we use to make paper. They all have longevity of 100 years plus when you use them with pigment inks. The Baryta satin is a slightly warmer paper. Once again, nice for skin tones, but I've seen great street art, landscapes, a variety of images on the Baryta satin. The photo rag satin is a very interesting paper. So where the ink goes down, you have a bit of a sheen, not a shine. And where there's no ink, it's more of a matte characteristic. So you have 2 characteristics in one paper. And this is the only paper in this range that uses the matte black inks. And as you apply the profile and do your media setting, you don't have to worry. It'll automatically switch over to the matte black ink. Photo rag Baryta, another one of my favorite papers. This, along with a few others, are my go-tos if someone recommends or someone asks, what would you recommend for a silver gelatin look? And this is definitely one of them. If you read the description on our website, it refers to it as a high gloss paper. I think it's more of an air dried gloss, and it has a little bit of texture, and it has a neutral base tint. Photo rag pearl, once again 100% cotton, slightly warmer, and more of a sheen than a shine. And the fine art Baryta is another one that I recommend for people that are trying to replicate a silver gelatin look for an image. And we usually look at a comparison between photo rag Baryta and fine art Baryta. And I will tell you that fine art Baryta, it has a slightly cooler base tint. It has a little more texture and a little more gloss to it. And then the Baryta FB is the coolest base tint, the shiniest and the heaviest at 350 GSM. There is a corresponding sample pack, and several papers are in both the 4x6 and A5 format. And something I wanted to point out earlier, there are profiles for all of our papers and most every printer that's out there or existed. There's a great archive of profiles. And before Canon or Epson introduce a new printer, they send one to our tech support specialist in our corporate office and his counterpart in Germany. And together they create all the profiles for all the printers. So literally, as Canon or Epson launch a new printer, simultaneously you're able to download the profiles. And it's really easy to use. Also, when you go to the section on profiles, there's some frequently asked questions which help you kind of navigate if you're new to installing profiles. And then finally, in the category of fine art, there is Canvas. Canvas from Hahnemühle is only available in rolls, which for those of you that have a desktop printer, that certainly doesn't limit you. I know a number of people that will buy a roll and cut it down. And it's a nice range of canvas. You have some that are, cooler, like the Daguerre, the metallic canvas, similar to the PhotoRag metallic, has a really nice pearlescent, opalescent sheen to it. So for certain images, it works really well. Cezanne is the 100% cotton canvas, and Goya is a slightly glossy canvas. People are usually more interested in paper and less on canvas, but if anyone out there is printing canvas, and if anyone's doing a canvas wrap or thinking about doing it, I'm here to tell you firsthand experience, it's really easy to do. We have a whole gallery wrap system with the bars, the corners, the pins, and the archival glue. There is a YouTube video that shows you how it's done. And for somebody that can have 10 thumbs at times, I found it extremely easy to do. And there's that certain gratification when you hold up this gallery wrap of, I did it. You become a 5-year-old again. So those are all the fine art papers and canvas. There are other links on here that I would encourage you to spend some time with. If anyone out there is doing alternative process, we do have a paper for that, and it is called Platinum Rag. It's a 300 GSM paper, and my understanding is that the sizing in this paper is extremely consistent. So if you're doing platinum palladium, gum, cyanotype, Van Dyke Brown, this is a terrific paper to work with. And I'm almost certain the last time I was at the store, I saw some there. So, okay, I think I've done a kind of an overview of papers. So hopefully I do this correct.
Perfect.
So now we get into kind of the variations. But if you go to Looking Glass and you've seen this swatch book, this printed swatch book, you might say, well, my God, Veronica, there are 20 plus papers in here. What gives? What's the deal? And I will tell you, I've had the benefit now of nearly 8 years of looking at paper. So you are looking at base tint, you're looking at texture, and even weight is sometimes a consideration. And Brenda's presentation, as she was talking, I made myself a note. So paper choice is less specific than some of the things Brenda was talking about, but it's really just as important. And it's why, I've done presentations where we've talked about paper for 2 hours. And actually tomorrow, Dennis and I, my husband, who's a photographer, we have a presentation, I think it's at 1:30. I don't like presentation, it's a conversation where we're actually going to look at some images and make paper recommendations. So there are elements in images that kind of speak to me as far as which paper might make sense. But I have to tell you, sample packs are really an extraordinary way to start, whether you're new to printing, you're new to Hahnemühle, or you're curious about a different range, maybe textured or glossy fine art. And here's one of the limitations of doing this on Zoom, because Jen, if we were in the education center, you know me, I take over a table and I begin to show all my different samples, same image on different paper. And typically what I will do is that I'll show an image, and this is on bamboo. And people will look at it and they'll think, oh, this is a stunning choice. This could really work for my next series or collection of images. And then I usually wait for a moment or two, and then I'll bring out something on a textured paper, which is different enough. And then I really kind of get clever and bring out something that has more gloss to it. And this is the Photo Rag Metallic. And really the point that I'm trying to make is it's not the same paper for every image necessarily. And that you really need to look at your images on a few different papers. And what I recommend is putting them up so that you're looking at them under different lighting conditions, different times of day. And as Brenda said, you know, emotion can have an impact on how you look at the image as well. And just live with them for a few days and begin to kind of narrow it down to your short list of favorite papers. And before I forget, so I love the printed swatch book. They have one at the store. What I have found about the swatch book, and it is what it is, sometimes you'll look at an image, as I said earlier, you may see, let's see here. Here's a good example here. So you may look at the bright white and think, oh, okay, that's specifically for black and white. And I have seen a number of images on color that are stunning. The point I'm trying to make is sometimes people will, as I said earlier, pigeonhole a paper. The other thing that sometimes happens, and I'll use this again, they may flip past this because they don't like the image. It's not their thing. And so this actually might be a great choice for whatever you're working on. So all of that is a lead up to this little, it's a media sampler. So all of the papers that we looked at are in here. No image, but it's all about paper. What some people do, they will unscrew the post and they'll lay them all out and they'll really just begin to pull papers based on base tint and texture and how it feels. So I'll put in my email again, but if anyone wants one, I'll send it to them. The other great thing about this, so 2 of our papers come in different weights. I mentioned the Photo Rag comes in a 188 GSM, 308 and 500. They're all in here. And the William Turner also comes in a 190 and a 310. And the interesting thing over the years, I've impressed on people, you know, if you want to save some money and print on a 188 or, you know, in the William Turner a 190, especially if it's going to go up behind glass in a frame, no one knows it's a 188 or a 190. So you can save yourself some money. And I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with people and they'll go, I know my brain tells me that's the rational thing to do, but my heart says, you know, it's the 310 in there. So they and you know, that's perfectly rational. You got to go with what kind of hits your heart. So, but that is the nice thing about this as well. Jen, I'm almost certain that you now have the 13 by 19 sample packs. And the thing that I love about the 13 by 19 is the ability to print multiple images on one sheet of paper. So you can see on this one that I've printed black and white and color. So you're looking at skin tones, you're looking at colors on one piece of paper, and that becomes a nice reference, as these do as well going forward. So if you want to see a color image on paper, you kind of create this little glossary or reference book for future projects. So I'm a big fan of these sample packs. I talked about decollage. If you could just see surrounding my desk, I've got, paper over here, samples over there. But I'll spend a few minutes now and talk about, as I mentioned before, one of my favorite products, which is the photo cards. And they do come in 4x6 and they do come in A5. And where do I start? You can create a postcard. The back of these papers, they're not coated, which means you can't print an image, but there's enough tooth or texture that you can do text. So, I know photographers that create their leave behind, their promo card. It's getting to be that time of year. So holiday cards, this is from a few years ago, but at some point, especially since we're decorating early, we'll have the 2020 version. And a project that I started on last year that may resonate with some of you is I've started scanning some of my old Polaroids, and that's my mom. And I think the older we get, some of these pictures become more meaningful. And it's nice to have these so that you can kind of keep the originals tucked away in a safe place. The larger size, the A5 size, is also nice for gifts. Now, well, before the pandemic, when we go to a dinner party, people take wine, people take flowers, we take a print. I think basically that's going to be our holiday gifts this year for people. This year in particular, we're going for meaningful. So talking about the postcards, I think it's a nice segue now for Jen to talk about a project that I'll just give you a little background on it. Jen and John are two of my favorite collaborators. We would always go in the education room and just kind of sit down for a while and kick around some ideas. And we did it this year, but we did it on Zoom. And I told them about a project I did earlier in the year with a pro photo in Portland, Oregon. And we did it back in May when people were really trying to sort out how do you handle the being at home during a time of pandemic. So it really had a nice little story to it. So Jen took that and created this bigger project that I'd like her to talk about for a couple minutes.
Well, I wouldn't say that I created anything, but I will say that the pandemic has done a lot of things, a lot of really not great things, and then you always find a silver lining, right? I mean, you want to try. How's that? And one of the things that it has done is made it possible for us to work with people that we've never had the opportunity to work for, and find new ways of connecting and find new ways of kind of reprioritizing our lives and what it is that's important. I find I'm spending a lot more time thinking about art, thinking about family, thinking about my home and the environment that I'm in, and trying to, surround myself with beauty and people that, bring light into my life. And that is part of why we got together with Veronica. And one of the other difficulties also is obviously owning a store through this process. And I reached out to a couple of friends who also own a couple of camera stores. Also women owners of camera stores. Let me throw that out because we find that we connect on a lot of levels. So Glazers in Seattle and Robert's Camera in Indianapolis, Indiana, and Hahnemühle with Veronica here, all of us got together to collaborate. and see if we could all reach out within our own communities, to the people who might be feeling left behind, and let them know that there's somebody out there who cares. So I'm hoping that you guys will join us for this coming Sunday. Veronica put together this fantastic presentation with Mark. What's Mark's last name?
Mark Fitzgerald, who's a Portland-based Lightroom instructor and author. And we're going to talk a little bit about the organizations that Looking Glass and Roberts and Glazers have partnered with. And then Mark's going to teach everybody how to print a postcard template on the back of a 4x6. So everyone that participates, and I know Jen, you got your little pack, will get a kit, and there are 3 photo cards in there. One is 2 blanks, and then one is addressed to Jen at the store. So Jen will collect those. And Jen, are you still going to work with that organization in your community?
Yes, there's a senior care facility in Oakland, and a longtime customer that we have not been able to see in years, who has been in that facility for quite some time. So that is why we decided to go ahead and send all of our postcards to a senior care facility, especially right now. That is going to mean a lot to those people who really don't have any good connection to the outside world. They're cut off. So we want to let them know that there are people out there who are thinking about them and care about them, and cared enough to make a picture for them, and just a little kind note, just a little kindness. Let's do more of that, please.
Yes. Yes. And I think, Jen, the plan is as you collect these before you deliver or send them off to the senior care facility, you're going to create this gallery of images that people can see. And the other thing that this does, it supports the U.S. Postal Service. And when we did this back in May with Profoto, we asked people to send pictures of them mailing their postcard. So there were some interesting images. One up in actually in your area in Marin, where he stood outside the post office, designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. And probably my favorite, maybe yours as well, Jen. One of the participants lives in somewhat of a remote area and has to walk up the dirt road to drop off her mail. And so she hooked up her 2 huskies to a wagon and had the photo cards in the wagon. So I have to say that was probably my favorite. But have some fun with this. And talking about the photo cards, they're great projects to do with family as well. It's kind of the old-fashioned pen pal program. And it's kind of fun too to get kids involved. If you print an image and then maybe bedazzle it with a little washi tape or markers or whatever, the more you think about it, the more creative and clever you get. And I guess, Jen and I, going back to the conversations we used to have about darkroom printing, and actually we still do, it is and was as important in those days to print. Paper choice was always important then. Am I going for a warm tone paper, a cool tone paper, how glossy, air dried, and it's much the same now. It's, as I've said, it's a fantastic time to be involved in image making and printing. I mean, think about it. You can shoot film and go in the darkroom. You can shoot film, scan, and do digital prints. You can, there are just a number of variations. And even if you're not interested in printing and don't have the ability to print, you've got such great resources up there in the Bay Area. You've got 2 printers in Berkeley. There's Brad in Oakland. There are several in San Francisco. You've got options. If you go back to our website and look at, there's a link for Certified Studio, you'll see them listed there. But as I said, you've got 2 right in Berkeley. And before I forget, Jen, I'm just gonna put my email in here again. So I'm not kidding. If you want one of these, just send me an email with your mailing address. It'll go out USPS, and I'll try and get them out next week. So, and Jen, were there any questions I missed or?
Oh,
Or
I got that wrong. No, I don't think that we missed any questions. I mean, there was one, excuse me, that came in for Brenda afterwards that I answered, but I also am not the expert. And so obviously send those questions to Brenda directly. She did put her email in there. So if there's anything we missed, then go ahead and reach out to her and ask a question. And it looks like, so Sunday, 2 to 3 p.m. I don't know what Petra, which email you're talking about, but this Sunday, the postcard project is from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Pacific time. So that is when that is happening. And we will be recording it so that you can reference it, because walking through that process of actually making the postcard prints, we understand you might want to revisit when you're actually doing it so you can understand.
so Jen, sorry. It's actually, that's 2 o'clock on the East Coast time. It's 11 o'clock our time.
It's on the website wrong.
Is it?
Yep. We'll get that fixed. 2 o'clock East Coast time. So 11 to 12.
Okay, I have my,
Sunday.
let me check my old school calendar here, but I'm almost certain it is, yeah, I have 11 to noon. Pacific time.
Correction.
Yeah.
That fixed on the website shortly. Hopefully anybody who's already signed up can still attend.
Well, and I'll send you the link later, the Zoom link for everyone. But yes, I've included my email. And again, thanks to everybody. Oh, I will give a little shout out. So tomorrow, I think it's 1:30 to 2:30. We'll be looking at some images. People have already submitted some files. And this is something I said I would never do, only because it's such a personal aesthetic and choice. But then I realized that people sometimes just need a place to start. And I have to say, it's really fun to look at images and think about them in the context of paper. So we'll be doing that tomorrow. And I have to say, I don't know about you, Jen, but I keep kind of drifting over to Toby's background there. I thought I had a lot of prints. Man, you got me beat. If that's just that area, I can only imagine what the rest of your, oh my God, I want to go to your house.
I do have a couple of things that I should note, because I am getting some messages right now. And yes, Toby's place looks amazing. He is surrounded by prints.
Yes.
So in regard to this Sunday and the postcard project, anybody who signs up, because you're paying a $10 fee, that $10 is coming back to you as a credit, and you get the 3 postcards that are ready to go. If you can't actually be there, that's okay. We will absolutely send the recording to everybody who signs up to be a part of it, and we'll make that, you know, available a little bit beyond just this Sunday, obviously. So that's not a problem. And you would actually come to the store to pick up your cards. But if you're placing an order with us, don't forget, we do delivery for local, anybody who's local. And that's kind of loose. We try to keep it, you know, within a reasonable range. But I specifically got rid of my car and bought a little electric robot car to just be able to make deliveries, because we understand that a lot of you want to be staying home and staying safe. Those COVID numbers are going up. We encourage you to do it. If you spend $50 or more at Looking Glass, it's free. If you spend under $50, it's only $5 for us to bring something to you. So even if you just sign up for the postcard project, I can bring those to you. And yeah, I'm the delivery person and the bookkeeper.
And they could use that $10 gift card to buy some Hahnemühle paper.
Absolutely. I mean, this is like the prime opportunity to try out the paper and then actually pick some, you know, get that sample pack. That Thursday by 19 sample pack is so cool. I'm so glad you guys made that.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody did ask, when do the postcards need to be sent? Okay, so here's the deal. We'll have like an idea of a deadline, but I'm thinking, you know, like December 20th. So we want to give you enough time. We don't give you too much time because we don't want you to forget. But we want to give you enough time to get a handle on making a print. And only really one of those is coming back to Looking Glass. And I would like to be able to deliver those before the new year, preferably before Christmas, if possible. So we'll make our rounds, we'll make it happen.
And we've made it really easy for you because Jen, you have the ones, we put a stamp on the one that goes back to the store. So you have no excuse, and don't worry, it does go through the printer with the stamp on it. And I have to tell you, I spent hours making sure that all 4 corners were adhered. So yes, they look nice, don't
They
they?
look wonderful. This one's for Glazers because I'm going to send one to our partners at Glazers and at Roberts. And the one you guys will be getting is the Looking Glass one, and yours will have a stamp.
Yes, it will. I promise. I
I don't need a stamp to
I
send
double checked.
to Looking Glass.
Yes. So I guess oh, so Mamie, it's the media sampler, and it has all the fine art papers that we talked about. It's a 2x4. And if you just send me an email with your mailing address, I will send one to you. And also I put my email in there, not just for that, but if anybody ever has questions, don't hesitate. If you can't make it tomorrow, but want us to look at an image, or you have questions about anything from, oh, I don't know, paper choice to profiles to availability, just let me know. I really am here to help. And I do really enjoy talking about paper. You know, for anyone that's heard me talk before, and Jen's heard me say it, truly the perks of my job are the people I meet and the work that I get to see. And Toby, I'm just putting you on the spot here. When this is all over and we can travel again, I would love a tour of your collection. That is remarkable. So I'm just kind of putting you on the spot in front of
No
everybody.
problem.
Okay,
I love
great.
people to look at my work.
Oh my God. Are those all prints behind you?
These are, yeah, I've been doing, this is my 51st year doing photography, so.
Oh my God. So, hey, if you don't believe me that printing is important, and there is no way you can replicate the experience of holding a print and looking at the print versus looking at it on a computer screen. There's just no equivalency there. So, and I'll just do this quickly. I know we're over time, which always happens with me. Brenda told the story of the image that hangs in her kitchen. So nearly 40 years ago, I did the ancillary workshop up in Northern California, and Morley Bear was one of the instructors. And at the end, they had a little gallery and were selling work. And back then I was making absolutely no money, but I drained my checking account. I bought the print. It's right over there. And as Brenda said, I still look at it and love it. I still look at it and see things that amaze me and delight me. And it's, you know, that way with everything in here, but that's probably that's the first print I bought. So Toby, you're probably the same way, right? Yeah, it's been a remarkable opportunity to just see work, meet people, and I'm grateful to Jen and everybody that I had this opportunity to connect with everybody. So yeah, we're over time. I'm sorry.
Always, I'm going to